It often begins in silence when a senior wakes at midnight and cannot remember why they got out of bed. The hallway feels unfamiliar, the kitchen looks strange, and even their own reflection in the mirror appears distant. This sudden disorientation, known as transient confusion, is one of the most frightening experiences an aging brain can face. And yet for many older adults, the cause isn't a major stroke or even an accident. Instead, it is something they thought was harmless, staying up late glued to the television. As a neurologist who has worked with countless patients over 60, I have seen how this single habit, watching television deep into the night, can accelerate memory decline faster than people realize. The connection is rarely discussed openly, but research shows that late-night screen time robs the brain of the very processes it needs to store and protect memories. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Tonight I'm going to show you exactly why late-night TV can double your memory loss risk and what you can do to protect your brain. As we age, the brain's need for restorative rest becomes far greater than most people realize. In youth, the brain can bounce back from a late night, a skipped sleep cycle, or even prolonged fatigue. But past 60, the architecture of sleep shifts dramatically. Deep, slow-wave sleep, the phase responsible for memory consolidation and learning, becomes shorter and more fragile. Without enough of it, your brain struggles to file away new experiences, store important names, or even remember where you placed your keys. I've often told my patients that the aging brain is like a library with fragile shelves. Each day, new books of information arrive. But if the librarians, your sleep cycles, are exhausted, the books are never put back properly. They pile up, get misplaced, or vanish entirely. This is why one poor night's sleep for a 70-year-old has a much heavier cost than for a 20-year-old. Take Mrs. Kim, a 68-year-old retired schoolteacher who came to my clinic. She prided herself on her sharp memory, recalling entire class rosters from decades ago. But recently, she noticed something unsettling. She forgot the name of her granddaughter's best friend, a child she had seen countless times. What changed? She admitted she often stayed up until 1 a.m. watching dramas. After several weeks of this routine, her lapses worsened, forgetting phone numbers, missing appointments. Her MRI didn't show a stroke or tumor. Instead, the culprit was sleep deprivation, eroding her hippocampus, the brain's memory hub. Mainstream science confirms this: seniors deprived of just one night of restorative sleep can perform up to 30% worse on memory tasks the following day. But there is another layer few people talk about: the screens themselves. Television doesn't just delay sleep, it also weakens the quality of the sleep you eventually get. The flickering images and sudden sound bursts trick your brain into staying alert even when your body is begging to rest. So the issue isn't only going to bed late. It's that the brain of someone over 60 cannot afford to lose hours of recovery. Each late night accelerates wear and tear on memory circuits, creating a silent decline that may take years to notice but is devastating once it appears. And if you think sleep loss alone is concerning, wait until you hear about the hidden danger lurking in the very light that shines from your television screen. Something so subtle you may never have considered it yet. It can quietly sabotage your brain's ability to repair itself. When most people think about memory loss, they imagine plaques in the brain or simply old age. Very few consider something as ordinary as light. Yet the blue light emitted from your television, especially during late-night hours, acts like an invisible thief, stealing the restorative rest your brain depends on. Here's why: your brain produces melatonin in the evening, a hormone that signals the body it's time to sleep. In younger adults, melatonin production is strong, but in seniors, levels are already lower and more fragile. When you sit in front of a glowing screen past 10 or 11 p.m., the blue wavelengths emitted by the TV suppress melatonin even further. Instead of drifting into deep healing sleep, your brain stays on day mode. The result is less memory consolidation, weaker brain repair, and a foggier mind the next day. I remember Mr. Cho, a 74-year-old widower who began visiting my clinic for complaints of vanishing words. He described moments where he knew what he wanted to say, but the word was gone, almost stolen from his tongue. His children believed he was showing signs of dementia. But when I dug deeper, his nightly routine told another story: hours of late-night TV until 2 a.m. When I explained that blue light was sabotaging his brain's nightly housekeeping, he was shocked. We shifted his routine to shutting screens off by 9 p.m., replacing them with light reading and soft music. Within months, his word-finding difficulties improved noticeably. Mainstream medicine acknowledges this. Studies show that blue light exposure late at night delays sleep onset by over an hour, reducing slow-wave sleep by up to 20%. And it isn't just about being tired. This loss of deep sleep directly damages the hippocampus, the very region critical for memory. But here's a fact many overlook. Blue light doesn't just suppress melatonin, it also increases nighttime alertness by stimulating special cells in your eyes called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, IPRGCs. These cells send signals straight to your brain's master clock, convincing it that it's still daytime. For seniors whose circadian rhythms are already weaker, this misalignment can throw off everything from memory consolidation to hormone balance. Mr. Cho's story isn't rare. Many seniors who believe their memory is just aging are actually experiencing the side effects of chronic blue light exposure at night. It's like leaving the lights on in a library while librarians try to restock books. The work never gets done. And if you thought light was the only invisible disruptor, there's another factor that may surprise you even more: stress hormones. Because while your brain struggles under artificial daylight at night, your body is secretly pumping out chemicals that actively damage memory cells. When the body should be winding down for deep rest, late-night television does the opposite. It keeps the mind alert, tense, and on edge, and this constant stimulation has a very real biochemical cost. One of the most damaging effects is the surge of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. Cortisol isn't always bad. In the morning, a spike of cortisol helps you wake up, sharpen your mind, and prepare for the day. But when it remains high late at night, it becomes destructive, especially for older adults. Elevated nighttime cortisol has been directly linked to hippocampal shrinkage, the very part of the brain that stores short-term memories. In plain words, staying up with the TV is like bathing your memory cells in poison night after night. Let me share a story. Mrs. Park, age 70, was a retired nurse who believed she understood healthy living. She avoided junk food, took daily walks, and rarely drank alcohol. But she also had a guilty pleasure: late-night dramas. She admitted that she couldn't fall asleep without finishing her shows, often staying up past midnight. Over time, she began experiencing blackout moments, forgetting conversations from the previous day or misplacing items in her kitchen. Blood work showed no major deficiencies, and scans ruled out stroke. What stood out was her elevated cortisol levels even late in the evening. Her brain was living in a state of stress every night. Mainstream science backs this. Research shows that older adults exposed to stimulating activities late at night, whether action-packed TV shows, loud news broadcasts, or even suspenseful movies, produce cortisol surges similar to those triggered by real-life stress. Unlike in youth, the senior brain has a harder time calming this storm. Chronic exposure can thin the hippocampal walls, making memory retrieval slower and less reliable. But here's a lesser-known layer: cortisol not only damages memory circuits, it also disrupts blood sugar balance. This explains why seniors like Mrs. Park often wake up groggy with low energy or even mild dizziness. The late-night stress hormones destabilize the body overnight, leaving the brain vulnerable to damage from within. Imagine trying to preserve delicate pages in an old library, but every night someone turns on a fan that scatters them across the room. That is what cortisol does to your memories. And if the hormonal chaos weren't enough, the very sound coming from the TV itself continues the assault. Because even when you think you're half asleep in front of the screen, your brain is still fighting against noise that prevents it from properly storing the events of the day. Many seniors tell me, "Doctor, I don't really watch TV at night. I just let it play in the background until I fall asleep." At first glance, this might sound harmless, almost like having company in the room. But in truth, background TV noise is one of the most underestimated enemies of your brain. When you fall asleep with the television still murmuring, your ears may seem to tune out, but your brain does not. Even at night, your auditory system continues to send signals to your brain, pulling you out of the deep restorative phases of sleep. Without that deep sleep, your brain cannot properly consolidate memories. What you learned yesterday, a conversation, a new phone number, even the memory of where you left your glasses fails to be stored in long-term memory. Instead, it dissolves. I remember Mr. Hahn, a 72-year-old retired mechanic who came to me worried about his increasing forgetfulness. He insisted he was getting a solid 8 hours of sleep. But when I asked about his bedtime routine, he admitted that he left his TV on all night, believing it helped him not feel so alone. A sleep study told the real story. Though he was in bed for 8 hours, his brain achieved less than 30 minutes of true, deep sleep. The rest of the night was spent hovering in light, fragmented stages, never long enough for memory consolidation. His constant exposure to late-night TV noise was essentially robbing his brain of the healing it needed. Mainstream research has shown that background noise can reduce slow-wave sleep by as much as 40%. That is like cutting almost half of your brain's nightly memory storage time. And here is a lesser-known fact. It isn't only the volume that matters. Even soft background noise creates micro-arousals, tiny awakenings that you don't even notice. But each time it happens, the brain's delicate process of moving information from short-term to long-term storage is interrupted. Over time, this kind of disruption compounds. Think of it as writing in a notebook while someone keeps smudging the ink every few minutes. The words may still appear, but they are blurred and incomplete. That is what your brain's memory pages begin to look like when you sleep with the TV on. Mr. Han's story carries an important lesson. Once he began turning the TV off an hour before bed and using soft background music instead, his sleep study improved dramatically. His deep sleep doubled, and within months his memory lapses became far less frequent. But the story doesn't stop there. Because beyond light, hormones, and noise, there is another trap that magnifies the problem: the simple act of sitting too long frozen in front of the screen, which weakens circulation to your brain. Mr. Han's case deserves a closer look because it reveals how late-night television can slowly unravel a person's cognitive health without them even realizing it. When he first came to see me, he was polite, cheerful, and insistent that his memory problems were just normal aging. But as we spoke, I noticed small cracks in his story. He repeated himself within minutes, asked me the same question twice, and couldn't recall details about his own medications. At 72, Mr. Han had lived an active life as a mechanic. He prided himself on solving complex engine problems even into his late 60s. But when his wife passed away, evenings became unbearably quiet. To fill the silence, he developed a habit of leaving the TV on until well past midnight. Some nights he would drift off in front of it. Others he would sit awake watching reruns until 2 in the morning. At first it seemed to help with loneliness, but slowly his mind began to betray him. His children noticed the changes first. He forgot to lock the door. He misplaced important documents. Once he left the stove on for hours. They feared he was developing dementia. When I ran cognitive tests, the results were striking. His attention span and short-term recall were far below what I'd expect for his age. Yet his MRI didn't show the plaques or shrinkage typical of Alzheimer's. Instead, it pointed towards sleep deprivation, cortisol spikes, and the cumulative effect of nightly noise and light exposure. What many people don't realize is that memory decline can be accelerated by lifestyle habits and that those habits are reversible. For Mr. Han, I created a plan: no TV after 9 p.m. Instead, he practiced light stretching, herbal tea before bed, and reading aloud from a favorite book to engage his brain differently. Within 3 months, his children reported dramatic improvements. He was sharper, calmer, and once again able to handle small household tasks without confusion. Mainstream medicine tells us that loneliness itself raises dementia risk, but pairing loneliness with late-night TV makes the problem far worse. And here's a hidden truth: the brain doesn't distinguish between the stress of real-life problems and the stimulation of an action-packed TV show. To the hippocampus, they both feel like threats, raising cortisol and damaging memory cells. Mr. Han's story reminds us of a vital point: memory decline is not always destiny. Sometimes it is a consequence of habits we can change. But if late-night TV continues unchecked, the risk doesn't just stop at mild forgetfulness. It may tip into something much darker, a doubling of dementia risk that steals independence and identity. And if Mr. Han's struggle shocked you, wait until you hear the evidence connecting late-night TV directly to Alzheimer's disease itself. The word dementia carries enormous weight. For many seniors, it is the diagnosis they fear most: the idea of losing themselves piece by piece, of forgetting loved ones, of becoming dependent. What's more frightening is that certain everyday habits can quietly push the brain toward this devastating condition, and late-night television is one of them. Scientific studies have shown that seniors who watch more than 3 hours of television in the evening are nearly twice as likely to develop dementia compared to those who avoid nighttime screen exposure. The connection is not coincidental. The brain of an older adult is already more vulnerable to damage. Combine that with sleep disruption, hormonal imbalance, and chronic overstimulation, and you create the perfect storm for memory loss to accelerate into full-blown cognitive decline. I recall the case of Mrs. Lee, a 75-year-old grandmother who loved her nightly dramas. She said it was the highlight of her day, a ritual she never missed. At first, she only noticed mild forgetfulness: names, addresses, recipes she once knew by heart. But within 2 years, her symptoms worsened. She repeated conversations, misplaced important family heirlooms, and even once forgot her way home from the local market. Her family brought her to my clinic fearing the worst. Testing revealed early-stage dementia. When we reviewed her habits, late-night TV was the one constant. Though not the sole cause, it had amplified her risk dramatically. Mainstream medicine recognizes poor sleep as one of the strongest predictors of dementia. Seniors who consistently miss out on deep, restorative sleep show higher levels of beta-amyloid, the sticky protein that clogs brain pathways in Alzheimer's disease. But here is the overlooked detail. Nighttime television not only reduces sleep quality, it also keeps the brain in a constant state of artificial alertness, preventing natural cleaning cycles from flushing out toxins. Less commonly discussed is how TV specifically primes the brain for decline through a process called neural overstimulation. Unlike reading or quiet conversation, TV bombards the brain with rapid images, abrupt sounds, and emotional highs and lows. For a brain over 60, this kind of overstimulation, especially late at night, exhausts the circuits responsible for memory storage. Over time, this exhaustion can look exactly like early dementia. Mrs. Lee's case was heartbreaking, but it also highlighted an opportunity. Had her late-night TV habit been addressed years earlier, her decline might have slowed or even been partially prevented. Her family has since replaced television with evening walks and calming activities, but the damage already took hold. This is why I warn my patients with urgency dementia. Risk is not just about genes. It is about daily choices. And one of the simplest yet most powerful changes seniors can make is turning off the TV at night. Yet there is another layer to this story that few connect: the way late-night sitting and inactivity reduce circulation to the brain, further weakening memory and cognition. Most seniors know that circulation matters for heart health, but fewer realize how deeply it affects the brain. Your brain, though it makes up only 2% of your body's weight, consumes nearly 20% of its oxygen supply. Every minute you sit still, especially late at night in front of the TV, blood flow slows. This means less oxygen, less glucose, and less nourishment reaching the neurons responsible for memory. When you are young, the brain can tolerate short periods of inactivity, but after 60, blood vessels become stiffer and circulation naturally declines. Add hours of late-night sitting and the brain experiences an even greater shortage. Think of it like watering a delicate garden with a clogged hose. The roots begin to dry, the flowers lose their color, and life fades quietly. That is what happens to memory cells starved of oxygen. I recall Mr. Yoon, a 69-year-old retired postman who loved late-night news programs. He believed he was staying mentally active by keeping up with politics and world events. Yet he came to my office complaining of mental fog, frequent headaches, and difficulty remembering names. Tests showed no stroke, no major blockages, but his cerebral blood flow was significantly reduced. His habit of sitting for hours each night in front of the TV was worsening an already vulnerable circulation system. Once he began replacing late-night TV with gentle stretching and short walks after dinner, his symptoms began to improve. Mainstream research confirms that prolonged sitting decreases cerebral blood flow by as much as 15%. For older adults, this reduction is enough to impair memory consolidation. But here's a lesser-known fact: when blood flow slows, the brain struggles to clear away toxic proteins like beta-amyloid. Over time, these proteins accumulate, clogging the very pathways memory relies on. The cycle is cruel. Sitting late at night lowers blood flow, which prevents the removal of toxins, which in turn accelerates cognitive decline. And because seniors often pair late-night TV with unhealthy snacking, the damage multiplies: sugar spikes, weight gain, and further circulation problems. Mr. Yoon's story shows us that memory isn't just about neurons, it's also about the lifeblood that sustains them. Protecting circulation is protecting memory. But the habits tied to late-night TV don't stop with sitting. They often come with another hidden danger: mindless eating, where food choices made in fatigue and distraction create yet another pathway to memory loss. One of the most overlooked dangers of late-night television is not the screen itself, but what often comes with it: snacking. Seniors frequently tell me, "Doctor, I don't eat much dinner, just a little snack while I watch TV." But that little snack at 11 p.m. may be the very thing fueling their memory decline. Here's why: when you eat late at night, especially sugary or processed foods, your blood sugar spikes at a time when your body is meant to be resting. Instead of entering repair mode, your system scrambles to manage glucose. In older adults whose insulin sensitivity is already reduced, these nighttime spikes become more dangerous. They flood the brain with excess sugar, disrupt sleep further, and damage blood vessels that carry oxygen to memory cells. Take the case of Mrs. Choi, a 67-year-old widow who came to me complaining of cotton in her brain. She said her mornings felt foggy, as though her thoughts were wrapped in wool. Her nightly routine included cookies and instant noodles during her favorite drama. Over the years, her waistline expanded, her blood pressure rose, and her memory grew worse. Testing showed she was pre-diabetic. But what shocked her most was the connection between her late-night snacks and her forgetfulness. By replacing cookies with a small handful of nuts earlier in the evening and by shutting off the TV before 10 p.m., she regained sharper focus within months. Mainstream medicine clearly links poor metabolic health to memory decline. Seniors with diabetes are at least twice as likely to develop dementia. But what many don't realize is that the damage can begin long before diabetes appears. Nightly snacking while watching TV trains the brain to associate entertainment with sugar rewards, creating a cycle of craving and damage. Here is a lesser-known fact. Eating late not only raises blood sugar, it also prevents the natural release of growth hormone, which peaks at night and helps repair brain tissue. Without that nightly repair, tiny cracks in your memory circuits remain unpatched, accumulating over time into noticeable decline. Think of it this way. If your brain is like a library, then late-night snacking is like letting termites nibble at the shelves while the lights are still on. You may not notice the damage in a week or a month, but in a year, the structure is weaker, the shelves sag, and the books, your memories, begin to fall. Mrs. Choi's transformation showed that it is never too late to change. But for many seniors who ignore these signs, the cycle of late-night TV stress, poor circulation, and unhealthy eating can drive memory decline into irreversible territory. Which is why we now need to close with the most important step of all, replacing this harmful routine with safer brain protective habits that can preserve memory well into old age. For many seniors, late-night television feels like a faithful companion. It fills the silence, keeps loneliness away, and offers a sense of routine. But as we've uncovered, this habit comes at a steep cost: disrupted sleep, hormonal imbalance, reduced circulation, harmful snacking, and ultimately memory decline that can double the risk of dementia. The truth is simple yet profound. The aging brain cannot afford the nightly assault of screens and stress. Every hour spent in front of the TV late at night steals precious opportunities for your brain to restore itself, to clear out toxins, and to safeguard the memories that make you who you are. But here's the hopeful part. Memory decline driven by late-night TV is not destiny. It is a consequence of choices, and choices can change. Let me share a few alternatives. I often recommend to my patients practical steps that calm the mind, protect memory, and even bring joy to evenings again. Safer nighttime alternative: gentle reading. Choose light, uplifting material. Reading helps the brain focus without overstimulating it. Herbal teas, chamomile or lemon balm, reduce cortisol, inviting calm. Breathing exercises. Slow, deep breathing lowers heart rate and eases the transition to sleep. Soft music. Calming instrumental sounds help maintain relaxation without disrupting deep sleep. Simple stretching. 5 minutes of gentle stretches improve circulation and oxygen delivery to the brain. Warm social connection. A short phone call with a friend or loved one can reduce loneliness more effectively than background TV. Mainstream science tells us that seniors who establish calming nighttime routines improve memory performance, mood, and overall brain resilience. And here's an overlooked fact: when you shift stimulating activities to earlier in the day and reserve evenings for relaxation, your circadian rhythm strengthens. This rhythm acts like an anchor for memory, reinforcing stability and brain function as you age. I think back to Mr. Han and Mrs. Choi, who transformed their nights from harmful habits into healing rituals. Their stories remind me, and I hope remind you, that even small changes can protect the treasures of memory. So tonight, before you reach for the remote, ask yourself, is the comfort of late-night TV worth the risk of losing the very memories you cherish? The answer, I believe, is clear. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Together we can build a healthier, sharper future for seniors everywhere.